Hey guys, have you ever been in this situation in Age of Empires 2 where you feel like you want to get the most out of your civilization, but you don't know exactly which one you should use at the beginning when starting Age of Empires 2, right? We have 39 civilizations as of now, and the entire field is extremely complex. So in this video, I will talk about, in my opinion, the 5 best civilizations to start with. So before we're jumping into it, we'll have to first look into certain metrics, which I will personally define to get a good overview of all the civs, right? And to better analyze them. So the first metric is going to be the ease of use, right? So I want the civilization to have strong units and also economical advantages compared to other civilizations. And then also with the units I'm going for that civ, the dependency on the other resources, right? For example, it's so much easier to only focus on, let's say, wood and gold compared to food, wood, stone, gold, right? So the less resources you have to focus on, the better it is going to be, as it's just easier. And then we will also look at the complexity of a civilization, right? I mean, usually if the civ is more complex, we can say that it is better because you have better paths to counter the other's opponent's civilization, right? But that's not the ideal situation for a beginner, right? For a beginner, you just want to go with a civilization which is just extremely easy to use and, yeah, not too complex. So at the beginning, we obviously will look into the civilization which is called Franks. Franks is, yeah, I personally would say the best beginner civ there is, right? Because it is easy to use, it has great economical advantages, and it also has very strong units to it, right? So let's take a look into the civ. The mill technologies are for free, and they are automatically researched upon hitting the next age. So that means you will be able to save a lot of resources just from that little advantage there, right? So that comes in very handy. Then, in addition to that, cavalry has 20% more HP starting up on feudal age. So that means that strategy, which is very, very common, the scout rush, is very strong with Franks. And it's also fairly easy to pull off compared to other strategies which are out there, right? Because with the scout rush, it's just so much easier to handle the economy, I feel. And in addition to that, we also have the foragers, which work 15% faster as well. So that gives you a little spike in the food economy as well. And so in general, with Franks, you want to focus especially on the cavalry units because they are extremely strong with Franks, and they're also extremely mobile, right? So we will be able to exploit maybe situations on your opponent's side where he's vulnerable, and you will be able to raid him there. So yeah, with cavalry you never go wrong, so to say. In Imperial Age, you want to ideally focus on the combination of paladins, axemen, and bombard cannon, but as you might know, the composition is extremely gold heavy. So if that is not doable for you, what you could do as an alternative is go for axemen, halberdiers, and then siege like onagers or bombard cannons, right? So that would be your ideal composition. Jumping into the next civilization, which I think is just super good for beginners as well, and that is the civilization which I actually started playing with, is the Huns. And what is so special about Huns is that they don't need houses, right? They start with 200 capacity already in terms of population, and that's also why they are so easy to use, because you don't have to focus on building houses, right? As a beginner, there are already so many things which could overwhelm you in the game, and therefore just reducing that complexity makes it so much easier to get into the game very easily, right? In addition to that, they also have the attribute that their stables work 20% faster. In Castle Age, their cavalry archers are minus 10% reduced in cost, and also in Imperial Age, that improves to minus 20%. The trebuchets are also 30% more accurate compared to the other civilizations. In general, Huns is a civilization which can be extremely good on hybrid maps because you have to think about it. On hybrid maps, you want to go for a dock. you want to start fish booming, right? Well, not necessarily booming the fish, but you want to get at least 4 or 5 fishing boats out to boost your food economy. And due to the fact of saving wood, because you don't have to build houses, that gives you a little spike there. So that's why they're extremely good on hybrid maps. And in general, they're also very versatile, right? They have great uh, cavalry units like the cav archers and the cavalry paladins section. So in general, Huns are extremely mobile. And yeah, I think overall it's a good way to, or a good thing to use them. But you have to keep one thing in mind, which is maybe the biggest problem. It is going to be a bit harder for you to transition from Huns to a different civilization because, as I mentioned, Huns, they don't need houses. And all of a sudden, if you play a different civilization, then you will be overwhelmed by getting housed. That's something I can promise you already. The third civ which I would like to focus on, which is my third best civilization for beginners, is Vikings. Why do I think Vikings are that good? Well, let me tell you. Vikings have, in my opinion, the best economical advantage you can ask for, which is that they are getting the wheelbarrow up on reaching feudal age automatically for free, and also the handcart is going to be for free once you reach castle age. And that gives you such an extreme boost on the economy, right? And with that, you can you kind of exploit that situation there with Vikings, right? So you don't have to pay too much attention to the economy compared to other civilizations. In addition to that, they are extremely great on water as well, right? So especially when you're in the situation where the docks are further apart from your enemy, that's really good because then you can fully focus on the galleys, on the war galleys and stuff like that. So that line, and that's going to be extremely good for you as Vikings player because you have the characteristic that your warships cost minus 15% in fuel age and castle age and minus 20% in imperial age. So over time, you will just spend way less resources compared to other civilizations. They have the downside of not having fire ships, right? So in the situation where the docks are very close to each other, where you usually see fire ships in the play, Vikings are going to struggle there, right? So in those hybrid maps where the docks are closer together, like for example Four Lakes, Vikings might not be the best option there. And docks are also minus 15% cheaper. So you can see Vikings especially strong on water, and therefore they are also, with Portuguese and Italians, the best navy civilizations we have in the game. Yeah. Also, what I want to mention with Vikings is that their imperial age. At the beginning, it's good because with the boosted economy, you can go for shenanigans like very fast imperial age with arbalest, followed up by siege like siege rams or trebuchet to decimate your opponent, right? But if we go for the long game and yeah, where your opponent is very stabilized already in Imperial Age himself as well, then that could be a problem for the Vikings player because they don't really have a strong composition at the end of the game. So with Vikings, you want to keep that in mind and try to beat your opponent as fast as possible. Now we want to jump into the fourth civilization, and that civilization is going to be Britons. Britons, I think, even was the very first civ I've ever used when I touched the game, and I think that's the case for most people because when you're playing Age of Empires, for me at least, when I started, it was Black Forest because you want to have it very easy to wall, right? You want your time to grow, and every attack which could come at the beginning could just decimate you, right? So you want to be safe. So playing Black Forest and Britons with the 12 range longbows is just a great feeling to have. So yeah, Britons is the one which I chose here as well. Why did I choose Britons? Because some people would say Britons is a bit more complex to play than other civilizations, and that's true, right? But what I like about Britons is the following. They have the possibility to go for strong and cost-efficient units, like for example the archers, and the archers are stronger as well, as they have +1 extra range on Castle Age or in Castle Age, and then also +2 extra range in Imperial Age. So that way it's much easier to micro them, right? Also, in addition to that, the TCs cost -50% on wood in Castle Age, right? So it's so much easier to start booming, right? While also building army. They also have the little advantage that their shepherds are working 25% faster. So that means you can transition into wood a bit faster than other civilizations. And you're also not risking having any idle TC time, which I think is one of the most important things you should learn when playing the game. Get out as much villagers as possible. Yeah, the archery ranges work also 20% faster. So that means you will be able to reinforce faster, right? As mentioned, guys, the Civ itself is not the easiest to use, but just very strong, cost-effective units like the archers are going to help you being a strong force in the game. I personally like in Castle Age, especially the combination of crossbows and mangonels. That is a combination which is very hard to beat. You need a lot of knights, for example, to beat that, and yeah, that's going to be hard to pull off at that level, I would say. Yeah, and the last civilization is going to be Mayans as well. So let's take a look at Mayans here. And they have the characteristics that they are starting with 1 extra villager compared to other civs, so they're starting with 4 instead of the 3. However, they're starting with -50 food, right? People might say that's not ideal because that runs into the risk of having an idle TC, but that's not necessarily the case, because you will have, if you go for the standard build order of sending 6 to food or 6 to the sheep right away, it's still fine. You will not run into any problems here. Their resources are lasting 15% longer as well, and that's one of my favorite characteristics to mines, is that the archers cost -10% in Feudal Age, -20% in Castle Age, and -30% in Imperial Age. So you can imagine it's very, very easy to mass a lot of archers with mines. Their walls also cost -50%, and I would always suggest to go for walls, guys. That's one of the most important things. If someone asks me, Jordan, how can I improve my game? And when I'm a beginner, try to wall yourself, because if you're walled, sorry for the drilling sounds, guys. I hope you don't hear them too loudly. It's just so important. If you're walled, you're safe, and then you can focus on other aspects of the game without being rushed. And yeah, they are also starting with an Eagle Warrior compared to other civilizations, right? Except Aztecs and Incas. And the Eagle Warrior, it has more HP, it is just stronger than the Scout in Dark Age, and it has more line of sight as well. So that gives you more scouting intel as well. So, Mayans, one of the best civs in the game, in my opinion. And with Mayans, it's very easy to use because you're mainly focusing on 2 units. It's either going to be the Eagles or it's going to be the Plumed Archers, right? So, very easy. And also the Eagles are the strongest in the game with the Eldorado. So that way you can counter a lot of things. Okay, guys, that was the video. I hope you really enjoyed this this format. Please leave a comment in the comment section. Just give me your feedback there, and a thumbs up would also help me as well. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Bye bye.